Bitcoin to $5 million? Are you kidding me? Folks, in this update, we're going to talk about Michael Saylor's most recent obnoxious prediction about Bitcoin going to $5 million, his reasoning for it. But before we do, we're going to be talking about the historical changes, the fair value accounting that Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy and Tesla, a few other companies, had been pushing for, a historical change in the accounting practices that are going to have a big impact on institutional money pouring into this space. This is the floodgates opening type of liquidity event of institutions and corporations being able to put, they want to focus on Bitcoin being put on the balance sheet with Michael Saylor and others. But as I've been making the case, and as many others understand, there's other digital assets with an incredible amount of utility, along with all the features and functions and fundamentals of a Bitcoin as well, like XRP. And so we're going to get right on into it. But I did want to let everybody know, I just dropped 2 exclusive updates. So I did my Discord weekly call, and then I just dropped an exclusive warning to the XRP community, my most dire warning to the XRP community that I have ever done. I can only speak about this topic that I covered, though, exclusively within my private group for legal and other reasoning. So if you're looking to get tapped in on that, you guys can find it at my website, zachrector.com. Sign up for Patreon to get access to Discord, and you guys can see what I'm talking about there. Now, in regards to this update to the accounting, the FASB adopts crypto accounting and disclosure rule for companies. The new standard requires businesses holding crypto to recognize losses and gains immediately, a change for which they rallied. Now, when we scroll down here, what does this mean? It means that when businesses want to add digital assets to their balance sheet, what they were having to do before is companies and accounts have repeatedly rallied for this change, as it would allow them to recognize losses and gains immediately and treat digital assets as they would some financial assets instead of as indefinite lived intangible assets. And what does this mean? Let me scroll up right here. Companies have to review the value of such assets at least once a year and write it down if it drops below the purchase price. If the value were to rise, companies can record a gain only when they sell the asset, not if they continue holding it. So for example, in your quarterly report, your earnings, your balance sheet, these companies would have had to take Bitcoin's lowest price and report that on their balance sheet, and it would impact their earnings, obviously. If Bitcoin had dropped down to 15,000, and even though it's recovered back up to 30,000, the way that the accounting had been done, the way that this was treated, is you had to pull that lowest traded price and report it as a loss on your balance sheet, even if you didn't sell, right? And so obviously this had a big impact and made a lot of institutions and corporations hesitate on adding these assets to their balance sheet for said reasons. Now with this change, this is going to open up the floodgates of institutional liquidity and businesses coming into the space, because now businesses will have to include gains and losses on their crypto assets in their net income. The rule is set to go into effect for 2025 annual reports for calendar year public and private companies, which can adopt the changes early. The FASB expects to formally issue the standard by year end. And so it looks like you will be able to opt in by next year, 2024, but the rule is set to go into effect by 2025, okay? But once again, I have some additional follow-up that I want to do on this one, because they actually did this to mortgage-backed securities during the Great Financial Crisis, or the lead up to it. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to follow up with you guys on the impact that it had on that. But as far as Michael Saylor and his predictions on how this is going to impact Bitcoin, because it's only Bitcoin, right? We can't talk about any other digital assets. It's Bitcoin or nothing. Michael Saylor says the 3 catalysts that will take Bitcoin to $5 million is a spot ETF approval, which is inevitable, the banks custody and lend against Bitcoin as collateral, coming soon. And once again, it's not going to be just Bitcoin. The Bitcoin archive and all these Bitcoin outlets, it's only Bitcoin, right? And that's just not the case. This is going to be all digital assets, in particular, digital assets like XRP that do have clarity as not being a security. And then the final third catalyst is the fair value accounting rules from the FASB, which was approved this week. So these are the three catalysts which will take Bitcoin to $5 million. And you're going to listen here on Michael Saylor talking in this space right here on Twitter. And you'll hear him say that he predicts that, Bitcoin's market cap will outpace gold's market cap by tenfold. And that's just the start. Now, listen in here on what Michael Saylor has to say. This is truly incredible.
And then
I think there's three big. Look, first of all, it's going up by a factor of 10 whether they fix any of the stuff, right? It's going to it's going to be a grind up by a factor of 10 just because gold is broken and Bitcoin's going to replace gold. And now
I have to pause him right there because that's just stupidity. Gold is not broken, okay? Gold is doing just fine. It's doing what it's always done. It's serving as a store of value, a hedge against inflation, and it is in the highest demand that it's been at in 50 plus years from the central bankers. So we just got to fact check Michael Saylor real quick on that one.
Now everybody in the universe knows they need a non-sovereign store of value in the form of a bearer instrument. So now they're looking, the amount of stories, for last year, people said inflation may be coming, we're not sure. Now the mainstream narrative is flipped to inflation is here, you need an inflation hedge. So it's going to grind up to replace gold. It'll go to $500,000 a coin, regardless of whether they fix these things. But there are three things that are massive catalysts that cause an acceleration. And I don't think that those three things don't take us to 500,000. They take us to 5 million a coin, right? Those three things are a spot ETF where someone can go ahead and buy $100 million of Bitcoin, buy a security, an ETF security. I think that's one. Two is your bank is going to custody it for you and lend against it. And three is I can mark it up or mark it down on my balance sheet based on fair value. Pari passu. It'll be pari passu to the way I'd handle Apple stock, or at least that good. If you have property with fair value accounting, by the way, it becomes pari passu to the way you'd handle treasury bonds on a treasury balance sheet. Treasuries are better than stocks because treasury is property, whereas a stock is a security, and you're capped out at 40% of your balance sheet as security. So it would be a major, major breakthrough.
Now, that's a big deal that I'd never heard about, right? You can only be capped out at 40% of your holdings in securities. Now, we've seen from the Bank of International Settlements, right, that their proposal would allow for banks to keep up to 1 or 2%, I think, in digital assets. And so it's going to be interesting to hear how this gets classified from Congress. And I was just talking with my Discord group in our weekly call, too, about whether or not we'll be treated as legal tender. And this is the conversation. This is another reason why gold is not broken, is that gold and silver have been classified as legal tender in dozens of states where you can now spend that currency without it being a taxable event. And so that is what we want for digital assets as well. But I'd never heard that, Michael Saylor bringing up the point there, that they can only put 40% of their balance sheet towards securities, which we do believe that most of these, cryptos in and of themselves actually could be found to be securities. We're, yet to see how that plays out. But you have tokens like XRP that we already know, as of the law of the land, is not in and of itself a security. So that gets interesting as these corporations and institutions go to add these to our balance sheets. But let Michael Saylor finish off with what he was saying.
If you saw any of those three things, and I'll end with this one observation. I tweeted this last week, but I think it's very powerful. It's if the banks can hold this stuff on their balance sheet, then a whole new class of investors are going to buy it. People are going to put in billion and multi-billion dollar orders to buy it as a treasury asset. Nobody's going to sell it because there's no reason to sell it if you can borrow against it at LIBOR plus or SOFR plus 50 basis points, right? So you'll be borrowing against Bitcoin at SOFR plus 50 or SOFR plus 100 basis points. No one's ever going to sell it. And then, as I joked, you won't be able to afford it. I mean, you will be able to afford it, but everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. When the banks normalize it and you can draw a $100 million credit line at 100 basis points from an FDIC insured bank, at that point, right, we're going to blow through the market cap of gold by a factor of 10.
Right.
So I think the best thing is those three things are highly likely to happen. I don't know if they happen in 36 months or 24 months or 12 months, but I would be shocked if it's more than 36 months. And I hope, guys, it doesn't happen in 12 months, because my view is the longer it takes, the more progressive the grind, the more time I have to buy more of it.
And I think right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Now, here's the deal. I'm just going to make this very simple. if you just replace Bitcoin with everything that he said, I agree with, right? But if you just replace Bitcoin with XRP, then you have a much stronger case for what he's talking about, right? A much more compelling reason for these institutions and banks to add it to their balance sheet and allow folks to, lend, use it as leverage, use it as collateral, and to treat it as a treasury asset. Just like he said, Bitcoin is the only other digital asset where folks treat it as a reserve currency, as they treat it as a treasury asset, like he said. And God bless the Bitcoiners. I hope they win. I hope it works out. I don't think it is working out. I think the program is a cute deal. We got to give respect where it's due. Bitcoin was the first. Congratulations. But now we have digital assets with all of the same fundamentals with way more utility. And what's interesting to the point there, like he says, the 3 catalysts, spot ETF approval. Well, there's nothing stopping us now from getting a spot ETF on XRP. The SEC might hold off, just like they're doing on the Bitcoin ones, because they're still in a lawsuit with Ripple and they're still butthurt about that loss. But there's nothing stopping the spot ETF approval for XRP coming at any time now, right? And so sometime in the next year, we very well could see the first XRP spot ETF. Next, banks custody and lend against Bitcoin as collateral coming soon. Well, they're going to do that with XRP, and you're also going to be able to do that with XRP without having to use the bank. See, with the AMM coming, that's going to be additional utility. With the smart contract capabilities coming, right? You're not going to even need the bank in this equation to use your XRP as collateral. And that's because the XRP ledger has additional utilities and capabilities that Bitcoin doesn't have and will never have. And then third, the fair value accounting rules. This is fantastic, but I've brought this up here. What's interesting is if you look at what Ripple did with their escrow, not only was it a tremendous tool for giving us predictability on the quote unquote inflation rate of XRP, on how quickly that supply was going to come into the marketplace. It's consistent. We can rely on that. But what it also did, it has allowed Ripple to hold control of the asset of the XRP and escrow without owning it, right? And so Ripple doesn't have, they don't. And the valuation of Ripple, they're not including XRP and escrow on their balance sheet. So Ripple, in their almighty genius, was able to circumvent this before it was even an issue, before this change is even going to come about. And you think about what they've been able to offer for the institutions and the partners who wanted to get XRP on their balance sheet. When you look at R3's deal, they wanted 5 billion XRP at less than a penny, and they had an option contract to do so with Ripple from 2016 to 2019. Okay, that allowed R3 to basically control 5 billion worth of XRP without having to own it or put it on their balance sheet and report those swings up and down on their quarterly reports and on their balance sheet. When XRP, a cryptocurrency that's even more volatile than Bitcoin, was going up and down, if they had added it to their balance sheet, they would have been having to report it at that lowest level in the quarter. But what that options contract allowed them to do was allowed them to control it without having to own it and report it on their balance sheet, effectively getting exposure, maintaining control. And that deal was the best sweetheart deal that anybody got, an option contract to buy 5 billion worth of XRP at less than a penny. That deal ain't happening anymore. But once again, Ripple and their genius with the escrow, incredible feature. But this rule change is going to open up the floodgates for tens of trillions and hundreds of trillions of dollars to come into this space over the next decade. This is the wave that we are riding. You guys are here with me. It's an absolute pleasure. If you guys are excited about this opportunity, just like I am, please make sure that we smash the thumbs up on this one and then share this message out far and wide so that we can get other family, friends, and loved ones that we're trying to get tapped in on the greatest transfer of wealth in world history. Hopefully we can get them in on it with us. With that being said, everything is at my website, ZachRector.com, and I will see you guys in the next one. God bless.